Hello again and welcome to the Daily Templar Report with me, your guest presenter Jim Dowson. How are yous all? And remember, like the video please, click subscribe, press the bell and comment below. Please, please, please. And share the videos. We rely on you. This is your part of the deal to get the message out. Will you do that for me? Hope so. Okay, we have a special guest, Mr. Nick Griffin today. I'll just check he's in and alive. Are you there, Mr. Griffin?
I'm here and alive.
That's
Yep.
Both are good. So we'll come back to him in a wee minute. We're going to do a wee Bible reading because we've got a lot to get through, so we'll try and speed it along a bit. Where are we here? There we go. It's chapter 24 of Proverbs, verse 8 and 9. He that deviseth to do evil shall be called a mischievous person. The thought of foolishness is sin, and the scorner is an abomination to men. Amen. And we know God will bless this, the public reading of His own infallible, inspired and errant word. Amen. Teach and every one of ye. Okay, before we bring Mr. Griffin on, I want to show you this again. Oh, I've still got loads of them, please. Oh, thank you for the people who have purchased them. But we still have lots, like 20 piled up. And, well, there we go. I can't get into the box now. It's a very sturdy box. It's very difficult to get into. But there we go. I mean, look at this. Come on. The finest quality, really tough leather. I mean, really, really tough leather. And it's got the massive writing. Well, it's not massive. It's not one of these totally blind writing things. But it's good for anybody, I'd say, over 50. But this is your everyday Bible. This is your up and down to church Bible reading, robust. I said the other day, throw it in the car with the kids, but you know what I mean. I don't mean that. But you know, if your Bible's in the car with the kids, you know what happens to it. But this will withstand a nuclear attack. This is locusts in this Bible were the only thing that will stand after a nuclear attack. It's really built. I mean, look how thick it is as well. No messing about with this. We've got these. They're relatively cheap, and we can get them posted out to you immediately. Are they available in pay-up version, brother? Are they? No, it's just a one-off. Okay, but there you go. It's beautiful. Come on, get these while they are here. Good. Let me put this away properly with the dignity that it requires. I'll put that over there at the moment. Excellent. Well, we've got some good stuff today. I'm going to bring Mr. Griffin in a minute because I want him to comment on this picture. I'll see if we can get this picture up with the techie guy of the mad. This is a police force in England, Liverpool, Merseyside Police, who's got a woman, there's a surprise, as a police constable. And she's famous for being all over the papers last year saying, we're not going to bother turning up at burglaries anymore and investigating. They waste of time, we never solve them. Yes. Oh, yes. So what she's done with her resources has been freed up with not investigating real crime. And she's done this. Have a look at this. Oh, yes. There you go. Do you see that? And you know, there's no black faces on it. So they're very specific in what they're talking about, what kind of offence they're talking about. So it says there, being offensive is an offence. Which is not strictly. Look at the way they're standing. One guy's standing there with a stick as if he's the management, the firm. You know, the what do you call them? The Goombas. It's actually quite outrageous because many of these cases have went to the High Court in Britain and to the European Court and they've been flung out. Because being offensive, it's just part of life, you know. If I go to the police and say Boris Johnson's offending me, nothing's going to happen. And in fact, one of our friends, Niall McConnell from the Shield and the Hern, the Irish Patriots, he was out doing a pro-life thing on Saturday and the police turned up at his door because they said, you know, out of the thousands of people that had seen his protest, one woman had been offended. And they came to his door and he was filming them. They said, stop filming us. And he went, you're on my private property. I'm not. And they said, all right. Have I broke a law? No. Well, what are you doing here? Well, it's an ongoing investigation. An ongoing investigation into what? There is no law being broken, so what are you investigating? Mr. Griffin, I'll bring you in now, and I'd want your opinion on this.
Well, Jim, obviously it's outrageous, and it is also completely wrong in terms of the law of the United Kingdom. Simple as that. The law is very, very clear, established by numerous common law cases which set the precedent, including some quite recent ones, which specifically say that free speech doesn't mean the right to say something everyone agrees with. It means the right to say things people disagree with and find offensive. Yeah. And that is the law of our land, and to the extent to which, even though we're out of the European Union, to a degree the laws of the European Court will at least provide obiter dicta, which is a sort of guide for judges, then those also say very, very clearly, upheld time and time again with some really serious people. It was particularly in European terms. There was a case of some Kurds in Germany who were saying quite outrageous things, bordering, in fact, on incitement to terrorism. And the European Court upheld the fact they had the right to say these things, even if other people found them offensive. So this is pure nonsense. And it's an example of what they're doing. It's an example writ small of the whole COVID lockdown thing. It's this elite simply running a shock and awe operation to frighten people into not saying anything. But it does not bear any relationship to the law.
I agree with you. Well, seemingly now, because of the size of the backlash, because it's really been huge over here, it's everywhere, they've come out now and said that they state that being offensive is not actually an offence in itself. And they had misworded the campaign. No, they need to sack that idiotic woman who's the head of Merseyside Police. She's not investigating burglaries, but she's coming up and spending tens of thousands of our money on this garbage. And of course she's got, I don't want to say too much because it's this station, but she's got short blonde spiky hair. I shall leave it there, Mr. Griffin. I shall, and maybe a check shirt. I don't know. I'm leaving it there. Now, I just seen somebody up there on our thing who should know better by now. Templar Gar said, free speech. Remember, we do not advocate free speech. And it was a good example the other day when Jada Franson was having this debate on her show. And people say, no, you must have free speech. And she showed a picture of jihadis and what they were saying in the streets of London, which was quite outrageous and I wouldn't repeat here. And people said, no, you shouldn't be allowed to say that. Well, you don't believe in free speech then. Get a grip. Yeah. Get a grip. So there we go. It's of course, somebody else here said being offensive is subjective, highly. So it's this nonsense. Mr. Griffin, what have you got for us today, sir?
What have I got? Well, a bit of a follow-up, Jim, on the business in Texas with the power issue. And I don't know to what extent it's now being resolved. I have seen that in some parts of Texas, people have had bills, just incredible bills of several $1,000s for just a week's worth of heat because of the price that it's actually run to. So outrageous stuff. So as usual, it's the small people, the ordinary people who get hit. No doubt, if people are in housing projects on various benefits, they won't have to pay. The super rich won't have to pay, or it doesn't affect them. They've got so much money. It's the ordinary people
the
in the
working
middle.
Joes.
The working Joes whose taxes and skills keep the whole show on the road. They, as always, are going to be the ones getting zapped. But last week, Jim, we were discussing the what was going on in Texas and what was the reason for it. And I said on one day that this is an example of the early stages of the result of the switch from reliable, energy-dense fossil fuels over to junk renewables, wind and solar. And then you came on the next day and said, well, you'd seen that actually it's what's going on here. The power's provided by a private corporation, and so they're doing what private corporations normally do. And that this is what happens when you have unrestricted capitalism, where natural monopolies such as power go wrongly to private corporations instead of staying in the hands of the state. It's one of the few things, actually, a state really should do. And I've looked into this a bit more, Jim, and we're pleased to hear that we are indeed both right, because Texas has already started switching although it's private, socialist rules and assorted subsidies and so on have pushed the private company into going into renewables. So then, of course, they've got solar panels covered in snow and wind turbines that weren't working on a cold, still winter's day. And at the same time, you've also got the fact that because they were unlicensed, unregistered corporations, they'd gone in for this just-in-time business and not having a buffer in terms of their power production capacity. So you put the two things together, and that's what caused it. So this is actually a perfect picture of what's going to happen in the future, because you've got this combination of out-of-control, unregulated corporate monopolies and crazy socialist bureaucrats making the overall rules. You put those two things together, and what you've got guaranteed is a nightmare for ordinary people. And what we've seen in Texas last week is what faces America, Britain, the whole of the industrialized world as these things bite even further.
Yeah, I agree. It's it's tragic, and I've seen today that a family are suing the state for $100 million because 11-year-old son froze to death in his bed. Now he's in there with his brother, so I'm not buying it really. Listen, I grew up in the 70s, let me get the violin out. I grew up dirt poor in the coalfields of Lanarkshire in the 70s, and sometimes we had no heating, and it was -10 and minus all that stuff. And, I was in bed with my sisters. We'd all jump in the one bed in coats and blankets and everything on us, and 2 dogs and a cat. And we were all right, we were all right. But it was bitter cold. An inch was the glass, the inside of the window had maybe half an inch of ice, all that stuff. I'm sure you've been through similar, Mr. Griffin.
That's the same thing in a perfectly ordinary but very large Victorian house, middle-class family in North London. And those things were impossible to heat. And I remember, dragging your clothes into bed in the morning so they started to warm up.
Yeah, I've done that. I used to lie on top of my clothes.
Curtains, and you could scratch your nail down through the ice on the glass. That was entirely normal, and it actually didn't hurt anyone.
No, it did not. It's tough. But so I don't know what's happened there, but soon somebody, I think they lived in a trailer park. So how you could value, your offspring living in a trailer park at 100 million, as their potential, perhaps lifetime earnings is a bit rich. But obviously they're not of ethno-European descent, shall we say? So we shall see. But it's tragic. Anybody would lose their life, but I don't buy it. I'm just not buying it. And especially with 2 people are curled up in a bed with blankets and all that. Something funny there. But it just shows what we should be looking at is genuinely in Texas how many thousands, and I mean thousands, of pensioners, old people, have died. Because they succumb to the cold very, very quickly. And it's just a gradual thing. After a couple of days of no heating on, or even low heating, they will just slip into hypothermia and die. And their deaths will be put down because of 84 natural causes. It will be. They've been killed.
COVID. It'll be COVID.
COVID, of course it'll be COVID. But they've been murdered by the greed of the stockholders and the directors and the bigwigs of these private liquidity companies who are using what should be the people's natural resources and the people's infrastructure like the grid to make vast sums of money. And as you say, it's just I'm an arch capitalist, but this is outrageous. And in a real and just and fair world, if you're a capitalist and you do this and you lead to the deaths and the chaos and the infrastructure collapse of a state like Texas, you should face the music, boys. You should be up in court. Yeah. You should be stripped of your assets. You should be left with nothing. You should be left with the clothes on your back. That's what capitalism really is all about. If you goof up bad, you end up with nothing. But these guys have got it always. They can take all the money with no risk and they walk away, just like bankers.
Yeah. Just one more thing on this, Brother Dowson, before we move on. That's that I was reading about this yesterday, and what's said is that Texas came, or they muddled through this time. They came within a whisker of a complete collapse of the grid. And here's the stunning thing I didn't know. Apparently, if a grid collapses completely, it does so much knock-on damage that the experts were saying, had it gone down, it would probably take at least 3 months to get the power back up. So it's not just a question that had it been a little bit colder or gone on a couple more days, it would have been a short-term catastrophe. You take a modern industrial place like America or specifically Texas, and you knock the power out for 3 months, and you will have riots, starvation, cholera epidemics, absolute horrors, madness, in much less than 3 months. So that is what I was saying when we discussed this last week. How civilization always hangs by a thread, and because of what's going on with the Great Reset and the people behind it and so on, the thread is getting thinner and thinner and more frayed, and at some stage it will snap.
Yes, and it's going to be very painful, as you say, for the earlier. It's the average Joe that gets it in the neck every time. It's terrible. Now, I just see one of your brothers in the chat there, Dennis De St. Aubin, asked us a couple of questions there about the crypto. Did the stock shares fall? They did. We sold out last week, but we had to refund a few people because they're not Templars. We don't know who they were. They just came in from nowhere and thought, this is a great idea, and jumped in, so we refunded them. And if anybody's watching and maybe watch the show, they maybe feel part of the Templar Order. Well, you can feel part of the Templar Order, but if you ain't a member, you ain't a member. You're still welcome, and God bless you, but the members come first, because people will do very well in this. So I think as of this morning there was 3 shares, because we had to refund people. 3 shares left. That's it, because we had to refund these people and get them back. Well, it'll be the end of this week. We're sending the share certificates out. Having to fill them all in and get them witnessed, what you've got to do in Britain. So they'll all be witnessed and signed and sent out to you. So well done, everybody. Now I want to give you a wee update on this. I don't know if you know about this, Mr. Griffin, but I'm sure you'll be quite happy to hear that earlier on today, a hedge fund manager, Michael Burry, he warned people there's a big financial crash coming. Sherlock Holmes, smart boy. But he's the guy that warned people in the mid-2000s, it's all going to go wrong because there's too much money floating about and all the rest of it. And he says, nobody listened to me, and look what happened. But anyway, he's out warning again. Everything's going to go wrong because there's far too much money being floating about, too much quantitative easing, blah, 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 and so on and so forth. Now, this is where it gets interesting, because it's counterintuitive. That's a word for you, counterintuitive. So, you'd be forgiven to think that if a guy's warning the money's all wrecked and everybody's getting rid of their shares and stocks and all that cryptocurrency would go up. Yeah, you would think that. I would think that. The very opposite effect has happened today. Like the Ethereum's went down, but that can be traced to one big hedge fund cashing theirs in, just cashed them in. 25 million, which is not a huge sum, but remember, these are finite, so they cashed them in and led to a downturn on Ethereum. But remember, we are long-term miners, so what it done for us is this. Now, we don't have all our rigs working yet. We've only got part of our mining operation up and running. We'll get 4, we'll get many more to go. But as of, say, 9 o'clock last night, we were pulling in about $200 a day, okay, for the limited rigs we've got. By the end of this week, all the rigs are up and running. That blip today meant that we went from earning, it's actually $180 a day to $500 a day. Now, that's not including any side deals or buying stuff, doing all this stuff that we're going to do over the next few years. This is just our mining operation. So from 180 to 500 just today, just with one action. So you can see how crazy and how volatile it is. It's not for the faint-hearted. You know, you do have to have nerves of steel, and you have to be quite philosophical about it. But there you go. So from $180 last night to £500 this morning. That's crazy, and that's where we are. The big dips and spikes, any big dip or spike, we earn more money either way, because we're paid for mining as well. It's crazy stuff, and it's due to the massive amount of transactions we get paid on them. It's very complicated, but that's basically it. So anything that goes up high goes crazy, spikes, we earn. Any dips, we earn. So brilliant. What do you think of that, Mr. Griffin?
That's very good. Presumably if it stays in the middle, the mining operation carries on, so we earn. So it's very good. That side of it I do not understand, but I know that a lot of people are in on this, and it's working. It's just part of a strange system. I drive a car. I've driven a car since I was 17. I've no idea how an internal combustion engine works, and I don't need to find out.
Well, I do, because I am a fully qualified diesel fitter, motor mechanic by trade.
Yep.
But I'm not a very good one. That's who I don't do it anymore. But yes, I understand it, but I don't really understand it. And, how does a piece of metal move itself? But it's a bit like tipping the waiters for bringing you food, but instead it's cryptocurrency. I'm not really sure about that. But anyway, it's handy. It's very handy how this works, and it's great. There's somebody who's saying there, can you buy gold with crypto? Of course you can. You can buy anything you want. You buy a house with cryptocurrency. You buy a car with crypto. Doesn't matter anymore. There's people who, Bartley Burker, we need to sort you out with that. But there's people who now, there's cash machines all over Europe. You can with a Bitcoin sign on it. It's the way it's happening. But you don't have to understand it. But I've seen somebody saying there they'll stick to gold. I'd be very careful, because I bought gold a few years ago. It's back to basically where it started, but it's entirely up to yourself. I would make some money then. Don't get me wrong, when I cash out on the crypto, I'll be cashing out in gold. Make no mistake about it. But I won't be cashing out just yet. So, no, nobody understands it. It's unfathomable. I don't understand any of it, but it works. We don't need to understand it. As you say, you don't understand an engine, Mr. Griffin. I don't understand the chemical composition of gold. But it is what it is. So, what else have you got, Mr. Griffin?
One other thing before perhaps we go on to the book, if we have time even tonight, another thing from the USA, this time from Louisiana, just down from slightly east of Texas. So if Brother Techie, if we can have the one picture I sent you tonight. Now, I found this actually the other day, and I've lost the original story where I found it, so I don't know the exact name of the town where this is built. But these strange things that look a bit like, if it was in Germany, you'd say this is a Christmas market they're just setting up. And, each of those little booths would be someone would be selling trinkets, another one would be selling Christmas decorations, and another one would be selling Glühwein, which is much better. But no, these are people's homes. This is the first of a new wave of permanent, semi-permanent homeless shelters for people who've lost their houses, specifically because they've lost their jobs because of not because of COVID, because of the COVID lockdown. So that's in Louisiana, and if you think back to your history, Brother Dowson, you may remember the term Hoovervilles from the Depression in the USA. In the midst of the chaos and disaster of that, these sort of shanty towns sprang everywhere, and they called them Hooverville. So I think that these things, there's going to be a lot more of them, and the buck should stop where it belongs. These should be called Bidenvilles. And there's going to be an awful lot more of them. You can't call them Trumpvilles because Trump's no longer there, and because he said, no, we're not going to lock down. He tried to avoid these lockdowns. The damage that's been done to the economy and to real people's real lives is a result of the lockdowns done by Democrat mayors, Democrat governors, and by the Democrat administration. So that shocking picture, because those huts were, as I say, if they were in Germany, they'd be just little businesses where people are in there for 3-4 hours in an evening. These are going to be people's homes, not for weeks, not for months, for years and years and years. And these aren't the bums, people there and drugs and all the rest of it. These are people who just lost their homes, that they had everything they worked for. These are the people, as you say, the ordinary Joes whose taxes made America work. That's where they're going to be living by the thousands, then the hundreds of thousands as things get worse.
It's terrible.
Quite sure.
It's terrible. You know what it reminds me? I mean, there's a big city now in America, over in California, IE, called Bakersfield. I'm sure Americans will be familiar with it. Bakersfield. It's very strange because a lot of country western music comes out of Bakersfield, and I used to think, how can that be? Merle Haggard and all these people come from Bakersfield because they're all hillbillies. Well, during the Great Depression, the big dust storm, they first moved the hillbillies to Oklahoma. I'm an Okie from Muskogee. We don't smoke marijuana. I'm sure you know the song well. And then they had to get the Dust Bowl came and they had to move further west. Well, there's horrible footage of the Los Angeles authorities, because Los Angeles was built as a white English Masonic Protestant town. And there's horrible footage in the 30s of the police and the guards actually setting up roadblocks and just blocking hillbillies from coming. They said, no, you're not coming in here, not a chance. They were bringing in African Americans at the time, but they would not allow the hillbillies in. But there's so many of them. Hundreds of thousands of hillbillies fled west. So they just settled in these things, these little sheds, these little shacks, and in their cars, made their cars into houses and all that. And that is how the huge city of Bakersfield was formed. Can you believe such a thing? So America's got formed for this. And, it's the people, nobody wants to help these people. And I think it's shocking. I think it's truly disgraceful that it's 2021 and these weren't even houses, Mr. Griffin. These were lawnmower sheds for your garden. It's truly scandalous. So our thoughts and prayers go out to the people who are finding themselves in this situation. And that is one of the reasons we're doing all this crypto stuff. We want to try and give our people some kind of safety blanket, because this is going to get much worse. Much, much worse. Now, before we... Bruce Samuelson saying Bakersfield. Excuse me. He's made me laugh. The armpit of the universe. Yes. Now, I class myself as a hillbilly, Scotch-Irish. We are, indeed, an acquired taste. And if you don't like a raucous town with much drinking, brawling, fighting and biting, don't go there.
And gouging.
I forgot the gouging. I could go to Bakersfield and fit right in, no problem. I'd think it was wonderful. But I'm quite sure a German or an English person or some other civilised person
Sweet.
would have a meltdown.
Swedish Americans.
Right, I just want to show people, excuse me, before we go into the book, just a quick wee slide, a couple of wee slides of the chapter house. It's a wee kind of an anthology, I don't know. Just show you. So there we go, that's when we were putting the founds in, okay? There you go, there's the picture there. Seems a long time ago, doesn't it? Where are we going? That one next time, that's how it looks now. You see? It's a wee bit better than that now. Now there's the roof all up. Now we've got the skylights in today, you know, the roof lights, we put them in today. They're quite small actually, they might be too small, don't know. There's the front bit, just waiting for the windows and the new skin getting up. There you go. And I don't know how many. Aye. Now there's the building fund there, I think. There's the building fund. We're still 17,000 short of completing the building fund. We're doing all right. We've pulled in about $2,000 in the last week or so, but it's slowing up a bit. I've got to say that. No, I know it's slowing up because people have been buying shares, but we must not forget the work for the Lord that we've undertook to do. So, you know, we're progressing. It's not a big panic. It's not a big skate. It's fine. Everyone's going well. But please don't forget the work of the Donald Chapter House and the Magdalene Chapel for the Glorious Dead. And it's actually been a couple of weeks since anybody's booked himself in there. So remember, when you're dead, you don't know what's going to be happening. And chaos, and I don't like to see that, you know, graveyards dug up and things knocked down and ashes flung away, because that does happen. So where will you be? Where will your mortal remains be in 100 years? Nobody really knows. And if you think, well, where's your grandfather's? Who knows? But if you book into the Magdalene Chapel, you'll be in a beautiful, beautiful marble box behind the altar, on the wall, with all the rest of us. And you'll be safe. And your family will have a big scroll on the wall. They'll know where you are. They can come here at some point in the future. And you never know what effect that might have on them. They can sit in the chapter house, they can open the big leather book of life, and they can read all about you, because you have got about 1,500 words that you can write out, and that's pasted into the book. And they can learn about your life, and you can send them a message across the generations of what you want to say to your loved ones in future, ones you don't even know yet, ones that are not even born yet. What a wonderful thought. And they can stay here in the Priory building, and you never know how that could affect their personal relationship with God and their faith, and then that continues down the line with their kids and grandkids. It's incredibly important. So please think about that. The monastery. We'll put a link up for the Magdalene Chapel for your mortal remains, but please give it serious attention. Okay, that's all from me, Mr. Griffin. Now, are we going to go into the new book?
Yes. Now we're actually running quite fairly short on time tonight, talking about various things. So I guess you've got a choice. I can either read an extract from a chapter, or we can carry on talking about the chapters.
I think carrying on talking about the chapters is good.
Okay, all right then. Well, actually, I'll throw the next one back to you then, because we got about halfway through the book on Friday, and the next chapter is on dispensationalism, which is the only named chapter actually, because it's by your good self, because it is a personal one. It's also important that this, because it's dealing with some really serious and very important piece of theology, or God theology, it's important that it's dealt with by someone who actually has qualifications in this, which of course is your good self. So perhaps here I can throw it back for you perhaps in a minute's summary. What's this chapter all about, and why is it so important?
I'll just check the techie guide. Did we put something up there for the Magdalene? All right, good. The Magdalene's link is on the thing. So, well, dispensationalism in a very, very, very potted version. This is what makes most Americans believe in the rapture and the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem and the sacrificing of the red heifers and all that other grotesque and deeply blasphemous system of theology. So, where did it come from? Very potted version. It was brought out as one of many Counter-Reformation tools to try and destroy the Reformation. And this was brought out by the people, the Jesuits under Cardinal Bellarmine. It didn't take off. There's other heresies that did take off. That didn't. The people at the time were good Bible scholars. They spotted it, rejected it. It lay dormant for a couple of hundred years until a couple of guys called Ben Ezra and all this, Lacunza, pretended to be rabbis, came to the West and said, we've got this secret knowledge. Sadly, a completely mad Presbyterian minister in London called Irvine, who was mad as a hatter, ended up in Bedlam, the asylum in London. He took it, thought it was all real, started the Apostolic Catholic Church. They've got a huge church in London. It was all the liberals and all that stuff. It was all the young people who joined that. It was part of that square. You know that, what do you call that set later on in the century? No Russell Square, the next square up. Bloomsbury. The Bloomsbury set. So that's where the church is, up there in Bloomsbury. Again, apart from a few hundred nutters who were round about him, nobody bothered with it. However, it went to Ireland to an Anglican clergyman called John Nelson Darby, who really pushed it out. But again, it was only the Plymouth Brethren who took it up. Anyway, some of them went to America. In America, a guy called Schofield came out with the King James Bible with his own notes down the side, and it was called the Schofield Reference Bible. He was a fantastic salesman, a fantastic company at selling. He was financed by some Jewish people, and he went the door-to-door salesman, and that's how most Bibles were sold in America up until very recently. And most people who bought a Bible, they bought the Schofield Reference Bible with all these absolutely lunatic and heretical notes in it. So everybody in America swallowed it, hook, line and sinker. That's dispensationalism, and people are frightened to touch it for obvious reasons. We have done a massive chapter on it and explained to you in every detail. You can check every single detail. I studied this as part of my master's degree. I studied it for years and I was shocked. So I hope you read it in the spirit that it was designed for, scholarly way, and go and look into it for yourself, because don't listen to whatever Jim Dowson says or Nick Griffin. Go and find out for yourself. We've given you the pointers. Go and research it. That's it.
Thank you, James. Now, it's a chapter in a way that stands out from the rest because all the others are directly related, either in terms of explaining what it's about and what's going on, or talking about, well, what do we do about it. All the others are directly related to the Great Reset question. This one stands out slightly as a standalone thing. So what's the relevance of it? Well, primarily this, that the same people as are pushing the Great Reset, especially the media side of things, and the people in the States, the Democrats, they are also obviously the ones who pressed so hard to get rid of Donald Trump, to have this literally coup d'etat, which is what we've now got. Better not talk any more about that as we're on this particular channel. So there's a crossover there, and perhaps most importantly, now that America is back in the fold of the climate change and the COVID lockdown people, the United Nations, etc., this means that once again the American government is a really important part of this globalist, blatant, open conspiracy against ordinary people. And Joe Biden, of course, is basically a fake heretical Catholic, and he's also a rabid Christian Zionist. He is a Christian of sorts. He is a rabid Zionist. Kamala Harris is also a rabid Zionist. Neither of them Jewish. This isn't a matter of being Jewish. I'm not using it as a code word for Jewish. It's a political philosophy. So the entire Democrat regime is wall to wall now with people whose loyalty, whether they're Jewish or not, is primarily not to America or the American people. It's to giant corporations. It's to the people behind the Great Reset. And it's to the fascist government of the United States, the fascist state of Israel. Those are the people in charge. And the more things go wrong, as the Great Reset's inherent errors and contradictions really start to cause problems, the more things go on, the more tempted these people will be to do what tyrants always do when things go wrong, and that is to have a good war overseas to keep the masses happy, and because the military-industrial complex, their pals, they make lots of money in the run-up to a good war, and even more in a good war itself. So the danger of this thing, regardless of who's doing what, why and how and what they really want, the dangers of it ending in war are extremely high. And the greatest fault line of all, the place where more war is most likely to break out, is in the Middle East. And that is primarily because the state of Israel by itself, fascist government though it has, would basically have to behave and get along with the Arabs and the Iranians, all the people around them, because they haven't got the capacity to take them all out. Whereas if they had the backing of the United States of America, regardless of the fact that ordinary Americans are sick to death of having their sons and daughters brought home in body bags and their taxis used to pay for other people's wars, regardless of that, the place that war will break out is in the Middle East. And the biggest single factor of that, probably even beyond the Zionist-controlled mass media and so on, is the fact that millions and millions and millions of Americans have been suckered by this total nonsense heresy. And that's why it's important, even though it stands out a bit as being different from the rest of the book.
Yeah, I think it's vitally important because I went to Bible college and we used to go to different campuses, and I went there once with 20 Americans, and the professor was a very, very learned man of great letters in several universities across the world. And he started talking about eschatology, the end times and all the rest of it. And all the Americans were sitting there looking at each other saying, what's he talking about? Why are you going to talk about the rapture? He said, I'm not talking about the rapture because it's utter nonsense and it's less than 100. It's like 100 years old. It's been accepted by Christians, but for 2,000 years nobody had ever heard it, and certainly nobody preached it. And he gave them a potted version that I'd done there, and they were all like, what? And some people walked out of class. They just walked out. He said, don't walk out. Sit, go, study, come back and tell me. And the following year we were there was 18 guys, because 2 dropped out of the course. Every one of those 18 guys come back and said, oh my goodness, we looked into this, it's utter gibberish. But there you go. Yeah. So it's really important that people get it through their heads rather than they just think it's a point scoring exercise. It's not. It's called seeking the truth in the will of God. It's very important. So.
Yeah. Okay, so moving to the next chapter. This is, again, one in effect written by an outsider, the wonderful, truly Catholic Archbishop Vigano.
Oh, yeah.
From Italy. The best of the spokesman, really, from the entire religious world at the moment, I think. Actually, a tremendous man who, right from the beginnings of the COVID fake emergency, was calling it like it is, putting the blame exactly where it belongs, and saying what a huge and terrible danger this is. So a tremendous piece. What we've done, we've actually got simply 3 letters, one of which was to Donald Trump, and others were sent out to people on his email list. He's representing a very old true faith, but he uses modern technology, just as we do. And these 3 speeches translated into English, they really are powerful stuff. And so that's a very good one.
It's good for it's especially good for all our Catholic members as well, because I think our Catholic members sometimes get so disheartened these days because of the Pope and all the shenanigans. There are still good guys in the Catholic Church, believe me. Some good cardinals, some good bishops, some good priests, lots of good priests. So this is in the book to try and encourage you and to uplift you. It's not all done and dusted. It's not all over. There are still good, solid men inside that church fighting very hard indeed, and he's one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on, perhaps time for one more chapter to talk about. Had to leave a block then until for later on in the week, perhaps. So the chapter after the Vigano chapter is entitled "Resolve Only to Be Free," and this is a quote from a man called La Boétie, who was in the 16th century Frenchman, actually a Catholic, although his writings were later picked up by the Huguenots as they were being persecuted by the Catholic Church in France. Now, I read, in fact, this whole chapter, or long extracts from it, Brother Dowson, while you were rotting in your bed. So I'm not going to go into it greatly, because I've already done it for a lot of our viewers. But it is a really important chapter, because the chapters after it, they get into the, to use the politically incorrect phrase, nitty-gritty of what people should do to put at least some buffer between themselves and their families and their communities and this great reset monstrosity. But this chapter is the thing which sets the intellectual, the genuine, not in terms of the modern fake intellectual, but the genuine intellectual, coherent case for peaceful civil disobedience, and just for getting on with your life yourself. And La Boétie said that the core of his message was that all tyrants, they don't rule you by dint of their power. They rule by dint of the fact that people accept their power. They submit to their power. And as he said, this brilliant, just few word quotes from the middle of his work: resolve only to be free, and in many ways you are free. Think of yourself as a slave, you are a slave. Think of this thing as an enormous power which no one can resist, and you give up resisting. Think of it as something which has no hold over you, which you have a right and a duty to resist, and go about doing it, and instantly the large part of its power simply falls apart. And it's a really important theoretical chapter which sets the scene for the remaining 6 chapters, which are the ones really talking about what real people can do in their real lives. But I suggest that we leave those until next week.
Well,
Or this week.
I think what's good about the Templar stuff is we're bringing writings from hundreds and hundreds of years ago, when people lived in times where their life could be snuffed out any minute. So they had a very urgency in their writing and a seriousness and a maturity in their writings that you just don't get anymore. Now, I've worked with people when I'm about the right wing and they sit and listen all day to Tucker Carlson or that other guy, Jordan Peterson. I sat yesterday. I'd never really listened to Jordan Peterson. Now, there's no doubt that he's a very, very clever guy. But I sat for an hour and almost lost the will to live. He didn't have a straight opinion on anything. It was all, well, it could be. That's a very interesting point. Well, I'm not sure. Unbelievable. Very pro-gay, by the way, and all that stuff. Unbelievable. But what a load of old guff. If you'd have tried to come out with that stuff 300 years ago, you'd have been dead by the time you got to finish half a sentence. That's how precarious life was then. And your writings would definitely get you marked out for death by the opposite side or several opposite sides. So I think I prefer listening and reading about people who were writing intellectual stuff 300 years ago, because it was very dangerous to do it then, than people who got no more aggravation than being bumped off of YouTube or their Facebook deleted. It just seems to be like children compared to mature, wise, elderly adults. I don't know. Do you feel that sometimes, Mr. Griffin?
Absolutely so. Absolutely so. And Laboity, remarkably, when he wrote this, he was only 22.
Wow.
Quite remarkable, because he is the founding father of everything that people like Mahatma Gandhi did later. He's the founding father of all of this. It was an incredible thing that he produced. This reasonably short pamphlet, in fact. But to give an idea of how dangerous it was, as you were saying, it wasn't published until after his death.
Exactly.
Because to
write
about the dangers of tyranny and how to resist it in a France which was ruled by an absolute monarch was a very, very dangerous thing to do indeed. So his mind was very focused on a real threat. This isn't airy-fairy intellectualism. This is a serious intellectual examining a serious problem in his own time. And because basically there's nothing new under the sun, as you know, we're told in the good book, the full circle. So the things he talked about are back now. So the solutions that he identified and were taken up by later people and made to work, they are also very, very valid for the situation that we face today and in the coming years ahead.
That's really important, Mr. Griffin, and I think all that people, mainly now in the Anglosphere, are used to these YouTube talking heads. We need to get back to some serious people. And that guy was 22. Well, remember, Alexander the Great had conquered the known world at 25. So, different times. But listen, thank you very much, Mr. Griffin. God bless you, and thank you for coming on. Very interesting. We'll get you on maybe midweek or something like that.
Yes,
excellent to get you back on with another blather about all this stuff. But thanks, Mr. Griffin. God bless you and your family. Speak to you again midweek, sir. God willing.
Speak to you soon.
Thank you. Okay, that's all we've got time for today. Now, I noticed one of your good brothers there, De Chico, was asking, is the McAfee Bible okay? No idea, because I've never heard of it. But when I rise from this chair, I shall go and look into it. I've never heard of the thing. There's Bibles coming out every week now. I don't know what they all are. But I'll have a look into it for you, brother, and get back to you. I'll find out, was it done literal translation, a dynamic translation, and who's on the translation board. That tells you all you need to know. And you'll soon know what it is. So that's it from me. Remember, it's 7 o'clock. Jada Franson, British Freedom Party, is on the YouTube and the Purged. I think the Big McConnell and the Irish Patriots are on as well. So around about the same time. Pays your money, take your choice. But Jada's gearing up now. Oh, excuse me. Jada's gearing up now for the Scottish elections that's coming up with that wretched creature. What do you call her? Nicola Sturgeon. Aptly named. Yeah. But she's coming there. Now, I'm just seeing here as well. I've just been seeing rockets have been fired at the US Embassy in Baghdad. It's not that unusual. Let's just hope nobody's hurt. But it's firing rockets at the US Embassy in Baghdad. There's a surprise. So, quicker we all get away from these places, the better. So, yeah, in 20 minutes, we've got a Big McConnell, Irish Patriots, and we've got Jada Franson, British Freedom Party. She is gearing up for an election, so it's a very important time. Big Niall was nabbed by the police for just going out and doing a pro-life witness on Saturday. So there's all sorts of happening with these people, and they're friends of yours, so please go and check them out, see what you can do to help. And remember, I think we'll get, what did you say, brother, crypto coins? How many's left? 3, because we had to refund people and take the shares off them because they're not Templars. So there's 3 now now available again. So if you haven't got one yet, try and get one. And that's all from me. Well, I'm off, and I hope to be with you tomorrow if the good Lord preserves me. I sincerely hope He does. But until then, remember, stick close to God. You won't go far wrong. Do us vault.